I wasn't at the meeting last month, Margot, and Kristen, I think you guys were there, and I don't know who else, but you guys started on the plan, I think, the Camden plan.
Yeah, I'll own that. I mean, I went into that completely like, I am running on fumes still. I will tell you, Wednesday in the first week of the month is like the worst week of every month for me. And so, you know, I don't get out of school until 4:30. I haven't been to the grocery store in 2 weeks. I got home literally at 6:03 and turned this on. I'm running, and the same thing happened last month. So I did a very poor job facilitating any sort of agenda because so I own that.
But Margot, you showed up, which was great.
So I showed up, but I
don't think you did a bad job. It's a very big project.
Well, I think had we just
And there were only a few of us here,
Camden
so
Rockport groups, we would have been fine.
I think there were 3 or 4 of us, right?
There were 3.
Yeah, there were only 3 or 4 of us, so it seems like
then you guys started, which is outstanding. It's really good to hear. I saw in the Camden plan some paragraphs marked in yellow, and I was curious as to who had started that. And Jane, that was you? Excellent. All right, so that sort of set in my mind how to move forward, which is to use the yellow text marking as we go through it. But I guess the bigger question is, do we want to do it as a group and go through each plan and dedicate like 20 minutes to Camden and Rockport and start the process online with that document right in front of us?
how long did we do that last week, Margot? And we barely
It was
got
about
through it.
20 minutes. I think as a big group, that's not effective. To me, it feels like we break into Camden Rockport, we go through those things, and then we come back together and sort of talk about what changes we've made and you know, how we want to, you know, support. And then each other may have some things to add to, you know, the work list, the master plan.
Okay, then to back up,
Or it doesn't have to be by town, but I think smaller groups to look at each plan makes sense. We probably know our own towns a little better than each other's town. But I do think we shouldn't look through all 2 reports all together. I think it's
okay. So are we comfortable with the basic format of both of those plans? You know, we like the table of contents the way it is, how things are sort of apportioned, because it would be great to keep us at least on the same path that way in terms of its structure. Is everybody happy that way, the way it is? And Jane, I'll ask you because you've given it the most attention, Camden and Richard and Andrew. I don't know if you were in on the conversation last week, but for Camden and Jeff and Anita, you guys, do you like that?
a great template.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it. It outlines what we've done. You can see what we've done, see what still needs to be done.
Okay. Great.
yeah, I got it. I can't talk.
I need to mute.
Technological issues, sorry. I have some pretty strong opinions about this, and I'm sorry I wasn't at the last meeting, and I didn't realize that the minutes actually had been produced. I found them under the agenda from last month, so that was sort of not a surprise given how busy Margot has been, and it was tough just to get going. In defense, it's 6 a.m. here, because of the time changes that are going on. So it's a little hard for us to connect up for various reasons. But going back to your question, Linda, and Margot, your observation, I don't believe that working on the agenda, working on this master plan as a committee in real time is a good way to do it. I think the right way to do it is for one person to buck up, go through and make all the updates and changes possible, and then have the committee review it. Because for all of us to go through, as Jane has done, and Jane, you did a great job, and mark up all the things that are out of date is like, yeah, okay. But then the next thing is to how to update it, and everybody should look at that. So you just have to sit down and work through it and update it, and then go through and have everybody look at it. I also feel strongly that both, as you just mentioned, Linda, that both master plans should stay pretty much in the same structure. And fortunately, if you have somebody go through and update the information, it's pretty easy to keep it in the same structure. And finally, the last part of what I felt when I was looking through it is that it feels like we're arbitrarily changing our priorities, the high, medium, and low priorities for what we should be working on, when in fact, 1 or 2 years ago, I have to check the date, we spent a couple of meetings going through and setting those priorities as a group together. And if you want, we can go through that again. But there's a process, that we can do to facilitate that. But I don't think that the person writing it or the person commenting on it, or even randomly in a meeting, that we should say, hey, yeah, this should be a higher priority. I think it should be more thoughtful, and that priority should be given within the context of everything else that's going on. And it's like, oh, yeah. So those are my comments. They have to do with setting the priorities, the structure, and that someone needs to go through and draft a more updated version rather than working on something that's so antiquated, which is what motivated us to get going at also. And that person, I will do that. I'm volunteering to do it, and I will have it done by next meeting.
Can you say more about what you're gonna do, Jeff? Because I wasn't quite sure. You're gonna go through both master plans? Jane, I saw what Jane did. What is it that you're willing to do?
Yeah, and for people to go through on the PDF and make those comments makes no sense to me at all, because for Jane to write up all that stuff in the comment section rather than editing the Word document, I don't know. Anyway, I would not recommend.
It came through. It didn't come through in the PDF. It came through right in the text that I saw Jane's comments.
He highlighted.
Yeah, the highlighted.
It's highlighted. It's highlighted in the PDF, and the comments are made in the comment area on the PDF.
Isn't that where you want people to comment?
And
yeah,
you don't like
should
that?
be in the Word. Should be in the Word document.
Okay, so can I make a comment here? Or
Yes.
I did that because I started this at the last minute, and because I don't go to a lot of meetings. Sorry, Jeff. And I don't know what some of the issues are. So I decided I would just start, instead of working on the Word document, that I would just start with the PDF until I had a feeling of what the committee really wanted to do, like what direction do we want to go in with this, because the Camden master plan is vastly out of date. The whole thing is. And so I started feeling like I was going to be stepping on toes if I started documenting, putting that in the Word document. And I didn't really want to get my hand slapped for that. So I started with the PDF. If you want to do it, it's fine. And I will be happy to back away. I have plenty to do in my job. So But if you want help with that, I'm also happy to help that, and I'll work on whatever document you want me to work on. But I think a bigger question for the committee as a whole is, and you answered some of that already, which is, what are the priorities for projects, and what is the vision that you want to put into this document that to update it? That's something that I don't have in my back pocket, so that's a problem.
And that,
And
and
Jane,
go ahead, Jeff.
Jane, you did a great job. It's that's exactly how you take that first stab, is going through and going, oh my gosh. And there is so much that needs updated. And hats off to you for taking that first pass. Really, really.
So then that leads to another central question, because the priorities fall out from a collaborative conversation. And so that's where I see breaking into the two groups. And I would advocate for Rockport that the four of us and possibly Heidi get together and take an hour and go through that document together and say, okay, this is what I remember. This is what I remember. Oh no, we decided that we wanted that to be a priority. Then make those changes like Jane did in yellow and bring it back to the broader committee. Hey, everybody, this is what we came up with. I would advocate that process, just because it feels like you're talking things through, as opposed to then one person doing all the work and then bringing it back and say you agree, because then people are going to be like, oh sure, this is great, let's submit it. Without a lot of conversation.
Or we'll be struggling like we did last month, everyone throwing in different ideas and things getting tossed around. I think that's what we were struggling with last meeting. Just people chiming in left and right without clear understanding of just what we were trying to do.
Yeah, without the product.
But the product, the Camden product has started, right? With Jane's comments, like somebody took the initiative and the product has started. And isn't that the way, the purpose of Google Docs is that you can go in and do what Jane has done? And
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of Google Docs is collaboration. And what's also the beauty of Google Docs is any iteration that you like that was previous, you can always go back to previous iterations and bring them up.
Right.
So no edits ever get lost.
how does that work though? Because Margot, if it's a PDF, do you
Well, we would have to put it in as a Google, as a live doc. So we would just take the doc version and like Jane's comments, maybe we go in and add those changes to the first origination. But, there is a little bit of work that can be done like Jane did and Jeff can do. That's like, we did this, get this out. I think there's some of that a single person can do who just, has some time and can do it. I think the parts that definitely need many eyes on and many thoughts on is any rearranging priorities or any things that weren't in there that we want to add. Need, that group. And I do think it probably makes sense to have Camden Rockport kind of do the first pass through, and then the whole group kind of decide whether they're comfortable with the finished like the final version.
So what's the structure of that then, you guys? How do you, does Camden, Jeff and Jane and Richard and Andrew, you guys want to take it and decide your own process, and Rockport will decide our own process, and then we bring them back at July to the whole group?
Sure, give it a try.
Does that work for you guys, Jeff and Anita?
I guess so. I just want to underscore again that we as a group spent a couple of meetings setting the priorities of what we would work on. And those were submitted a couple of times as work, work list of projects or work that went to the select board.
Yeah.
So where is that? Where's that information?
Yeah, I'm
Where
sorry,
do we
Jane.
find that information? Where do we
Work,
find that?
I remember
yeah.
the work plans.
I'm happy to put it up there. I thought I had, but it may not necessarily be in
I'm gonna
that
do-
particular
Can I do a
link.
quick screen share? Because I do see the Camden work plan and the Rockport work plan.
Yeah, that's where it is. So it's not under the master plan,
Okay.
but it's there.
So
Okay,
I'm gonna do a quick screen. I'm gonna grab the screen and just share real quick. So in my Google Docs, I have something that's called work plan. And in work plan, we have Camden and we have Rockport. And then in Camden,
What-
there's,
See it on my screen because it's so small.
okay. But is
What's-
this what can't,
what's-
it had a green header? This is
Yeah,
dated
that looks like,
21-22.
yeah.
I mean, it's, are you guys looking for the priorities? If you look on page 14 of the Camden master plan, the priorities are listed there as high, medium, and low. And
Yeah,
if you
those
took-
are dated ones, Kristen. They're the ones that are 10, 15 years old.
Yeah.
We've updated it.
Oh, you have. Okay, that's
So
good.
that's what I was showing was so the work plan is a more updated. So it's kind of like the work plan has to connect with
With the
Whatever the,
master
uh,
plan.
with the master
master.
plan.
And
Right.
that's
That's
what
what
we're
I-
working on now are the master plans, right? The work plans fall out of the master plans, don't they? So if we have the work, it's like a comp plan. So the comp plan, and then here's what falls out, the recommendations from a comp plan. I mean, do we concentrate right now on the master plans and get them good and updated, polished, and get them, and then a work plan follows from that, like hand in hand?
You're right. You're right, Linda, that the work plan falls from the master plan. But the select board asked us for plans for a couple of years, last couple of years. And then rather than rewriting the master plan, which was sorely outdated, I took the shortcut and just made a brief list
Yeah,
of what those priorities were. So
no,
those
and it's
just,
great. It's great.
Yeah,
The structure works.
they just have to be reincorporated back into the master plan, which, and Jane, it's probably not great. Your comment about having a vision is that we have to take another look at that vision, which is something we could work on as a group. But I have been in meetings, retreats where we spent 4 hours working on a vision. And that's all. So,
yeah, I don't think we need like a, strategic plan kind of vision, but just for me, it's like, what's the tone going to be in this document? Because the tone of the document that I was working on today seemed, and I don't mean this in any kind of critical way, but it just seemed negative. Like it's really dangerous out there. And so we have to do all this stuff. And so, my first inclination was that I didn't really like that. And so that brings up a question of, what does the rest of the group think about that tone, and how do we want to, once we have our ideas and what we want to accomplish, how do we want to frame those for the public and for the select board? And I think that's sort of a bigger question than just, what do we want to have first, second, and third, but how do we want to frame all that so that we can maybe get some action taken on some of those items? Does that make sense?
that's an excellent point, Jane. And whatever tone I think we take, well, maybe not, but my feeling is that since this is a two-town committee, that the tone should be similar between the two.
The other thing is, to me, what seems different than a work plan versus the master plan is the master plan, we share it, of course, with the select board and with the town officials, but it is also something that we can share with other town committees. So it seems like a perfect thing to share with the conservation committee of Rockport And so to see where our priorities are, they can kind of see this bigger vision. And it may allow us to do a lot more leveraging with each other's groups. So I think the template of the original one it's a great template. I think Jane's observation on tone is, this really needs to have something that, that having that kind of overall vision piece is really a really valuable one. And I think the nitty gritty of it, we've got some work from the work plan. So how we put this all together, it seems like it may be a multi-step piece. So it's laying out what work do we do between now and June, and then what do we do between June and July?
So I may have been too ambitious in saying, let's get it all polished and to the select boards by August. Maybe September seems more reasonable. But in terms of the two towns doing, the residents, you guys doing one thing and Rockport doing another, to determine our own times to do that, but come back in July with at least a progress report, right? From from both of them, and then shoot for August to have it almost finished.
Yeah, I would like to ask Jeff again what he was proposing, like what you were proposing for work, because there's pieces that this can't be solo, but then there's pieces that it doesn't take a team of people. It just, like what Jane just did. It's there's like some basic stuff that people can go through who have understanding that can just kind of. So what were you thinking?
I think the hardest for me personally, the hardest part is to update the language and make it more current, and as Jane suggested, maybe less negative or less concerned about general safety of everything all the time. But the other part that's missing is I want to make sure that we don't lose the work that we've done as a committee in the last couple of years about setting those priorities, and the high, medium, low that Kristen, I think you were pointing out on page 17, to update that and not have the committee redo it from zero, I think would be good. And then as a group, like a Camden group, we go, okay, are we still good with that? Do we want to look through that again? And the same for Rockport, that you should look at those priorities. And that's the work that can be done as a group, as well as general editing. People can look through and say, you forgot to mention this, like Jane did when she highlighted, this is outdated. And then the big question, I think, which was mentioned last time, is, do we want to update the survey? Is the survey is kind of out of date now? Do we want to survey the general population of Camden and Rockport and ask for input from them? That's a whole project that would take a year, and we don't want to wait for that to happen. It may be something we want to do as a group. It may be something we want to do as a group, as a committee, but that's certainly a decision for the committee and not somebody who's writing the plan. The person who writes the plan is just reflecting what the committee's intent is. So summarizing Jane's comment about whether we want to survey the communities again, that's a decision for the group. And the second one is to relook at the priorities of what we should be working on and whether those still reflect our current thinking. The other nitty gritty can just be done in the privacy of reading and editing, which is all the other editing stuff that Jane has started to do. But I think that someone needs to go through and update it and get a more updated document for people to work with. And what I'm saying, or gosh, Jane, it'd be great if you wanted to do it, not wanted to, but are willing to do it, that that we should be able to get that done by next meeting. So it's all sort of updated for people as groups to look at, rather than rewriting as groups. Rewriting as a group doesn't work.
I agree.
So, but collaborating via the Google Docs does work, right? So if you guys go ahead and write your comments, et cetera, Margot, we can streamline that and make that incorporate. That's where I fall short, is like, well, where are we accepting this one and where are we not accepting this one? And it could get very chaotic, I would think, to do it that way. So does one person take the document? I don't know. You know what? I'm going to say, Camden, you guys, Jeff and Jane, you guys figure out the process you want to use, and then Rockport, I'm just going to throw it out there. I would love just to have a general conversation with the Rockport people about that 2015 plan, and then we can figure out the process for that one. Is that okay, Margot? I know that you're incredibly busy, but if we can find an hour, and Kristen, if we can find time and get Amber and Heidi.
Everything but
because
the
I think-
first week of the months are much better for me.
The
But
what?
we could break in, if we want to break into 2 small groups right now, although I don't know how that goes for public, sharing, in terms of being recorded, but we could quickly break into a Camden Rockport and just figure out what process. So to me, it's like, what's our work plan between now and the June meeting? And I think we've got all the pieces there. It's just, we need to have just that real clarity about, okay, maybe Linda's going to do a little edit on the tone. I'll work, maybe Kristen and I do the work plan and make sure priorities, of what we did there. And then is there anything missing we can add as some notes? I mean, I could see what we could do, like from our little Rockport group. And I think Camden, you've got all the little pieces there as well. And if we came with sort of drafts, we would be okay. Allison, what were you?
Maybe this has already been covered a lot in the past, but I was just wondering if what had been said before about the idea of combining the plans. It kind of feels like the whole part of the purpose of the committee was to be a joint undertaking, and for Camden Rockport to be working together. And so many people in Camden spend some time in Rockport, and so many, the idea is that we would be increasing that. Is there sometimes opening 2 documents slows people down? Wouldn't it be better if sort of both towns were aware of what was being planned for the other town too?
So that you knew how to prioritize.
The opening statement, I mean, they're town familiar. I just wonder when we refer these plans before select boards or planning boards, et cetera, if they're going to be like, well, you're going to make us look at Camden too, and we're going to have, and how are we going to break everything out? So if the 2 are like twins in a way, in terms of how they look and then their opening statements and so forth, but then it goes into specific Camden material, because Camden's got a lot that's happened since 27. Rockport doesn't have a lot that's happened since 2015, but that sort of, institutional memory we've got to put in there. And we really haven't shared too much either. I don't recall, except
But
for the
what might
Maritime
be
Farm.
really helpful is thinking about that. If each plan, or particularly Rockport's plan, was able to say, this project. So for instance, Maritime Farms, Camden did this part with the understanding that Rockport would do this part. So the whole project would look like that. So where there's like this synergy, we include, these pieces of where they are really continuous projects. you know, and there may be that section, a section that we add that's not in there currently of, you know, why this Rockport project really has so much more impact in terms of, you know, that because it's you know, we are a community that's deeply connected.
I mean, most people that are riding bikes are trying to get somewhere. When I talk to parents about their kids and riding to school and things, it just always includes, or almost always includes, both towns. And so when you're looking at, I think about sometimes when I'm looking at different things for like Midco solid waste on on the individual town GIS pages, and you have to pull up, you're like, oh, we got to the Rockport town line. So it's all this blank information. And then you have to go back and forth. And maybe it would be good if people in Camden were reminded sometimes of things that might be coming up in Rockport and vice versa. Not everybody is so acutely aware of the town lines, I think, as all of us. And I don't know, I think the document could be, I mean, you could continue to do it just the way that you're doing it right now, but maybe at the end, there might be an opportunity to merge the documents, so that, yeah, you might have to scroll to page 7 to get to the Camden specific narrative, but hopefully we could, I'd love to help create a map or something too, that's out of what you guys do, so that you could see it all in one spot, and maybe we wouldn't have so many dead end trails. And
Well, a
Allison,
map
a
would,
question. Allison, a question. If a document was brought forward that included Rockport action items to the Camden Select Board, and the Camden Select Board was asked to accept this document, would there be some sort of, would that be difficult for the Camden Select Board to say, yeah, okay, we accept this document, but this is talking about Rockport?
I mean, I think that the, political environment or whatever evolves, and that it's difficult to plan for like a certain set of people, and that ultimately we want to make a document that's as useful to the community as possible also. And
But
my
the thing
personal
is that
hope would be that we would sit down as a Camden, we would say, hey, Camden and Rockport select boards, let's plan a joint meeting and talk about this. And I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow, but I think that should continue. The idea behind the Pathways Committee of like connectivity between the two towns, I think, is sort of like the inspired vision here. And just because there's a little bit of fussiness on one select board or another, or that, I hope you guys should probably, in my opinion, continue to push the like united vision for the community. But then if you need to create, because of the political environments or whatever, you need to be able to break that up into 2 documents because one town or the other requests it, then so be it. But that overall, like, I mean, I think sometimes Rockport people have really great comments about Camden priorities too. And that just splitting up into 2 groups based on what towns we live in might not be the best way to go about.
So the 2015 Rockport plan has that connectivity language that is still current in our minds. It's got a lot of that that could be it can be a tone that goes across both. But Allison, you mentioned a map, and that would be really good for both, because this is, it's a hybrid. If it's an online report, great. Then we have all of these, we can go digitally wild wherever we want to go. But are you serious about creating a map? Because a map is such a great graphic that we can use and we can promote for, like, this is where, Rockport's Route 90 plan, sewer plan includes a sidewalk all the way out to West Rockport. Great, let's put that in yellow. And then we have the already existing West Street sidewalk in green or something.
We have this, Linda, and it's probably on the website somewhere.
But do we,
Margot, I've done maps for both towns.
do the maps have where
it has existing and planned based on how important.
Are they static plans, like static drawings, or are they,
You
so,
can't go in and it's not easy for you to go in and edit them.
so Allison, is a map that you were thinking of making, would that be a, interactive map, or what were you thinking?
I mean, so there are a couple different levels. The town has Esri accounts, and we've been expanding. We've been doing like street tree mapping and stormwater mapping, and we've trained the Conservation Commission to map out, or some of them to map out like stormwater pipes and things like that. And then we've been talking a little bit to the Rockport Conservation Commission about how we might be able, because it's the same thing with the way the water flows. It doesn't stop at town lines. And so we're hoping to merge a database rather than, map everything out separately. So that was just that was a layer that was created by CAI, which is now the company that does the GIS for both the assessing databases for both Camden and Rockport. And so ideally, Pathways we could give Pathways members logins, just like we've given, we have like a field worker login for the Conservation Commission members who've been trained. And so that would be like, okay, if there's a little bit of money there and they'd be willing to create something, that would be the grand hope, I would think. But then as a shorter term thing, I could also just take something like what you guys already have maybe, and create something that would be publicly editable. There are a bunch of different models, but I think it would be, the town does have money in a GIS budget, and we might be able to it depends on what you guys want to do, but I think pushing for a similar level of interactivity as what the Conservation Commission has been able to do with both the street tree mapping and the stormwater mapping might be a good model for Pathways.
That sounds like a great goal. If we can, if we can pull that off, because that would be something to, to let the public know where we want to extend and go next.
So just to interject really late, I realized, we probably need to take minutes.
You and I had the same thought, so I started writing.
I did too, but I put a link in the chat. So those that are Zoom savvy, there's a little chat and there's a link to the minutes. And this is where like group writing can be so helpful. So if anybody wants to go into the minutes, I've started some, but one of the things I said is additions to the new master plan, one being the map and another on sections, a section of projects that better connect the two towns, and kind of highlighting those in each of the two town reports makes sense. And
Great.
so the beauty now is that I have missed a lot of stuff, and if anybody sees some little things to add,
Okay.
please do.
Okay. No, that's great. I think then our master plans are taking a really good form. Instead of, just rehashing and being static, we can move forward so they become useful, hopefully become useful to whoever comes next in terms of select boards and planning boards and goals of the towns. I am really ignorant as to what the town of Camden is doing right now. And Allison, I was hoping maybe you had insight in terms of what's next on sidewalks and pathways, because I know that a lot was done, right? But I don't know what the town has planned next.
I mean, yeah, so we're a little bit at that stagnation point with the Route 1 sidewalk, the Elm Street sidewalk. I think that your presentation and letter was as well presented and stated as anything could be, but that it would be useful to keep on, hammering and pushing that. One of the things that has been happening is CMP and others have been replacing telephone poles. So I know that I had a couple people write me sort of frantically about them placing telephone poles in the sidewalk in an even worse location than they are currently, which was really discouraging because they were the ones they initially replaced were all going in a better location outside of the sidewalk. So I was like, wow. But then they put some right in the sidewalk, and I know Dave was trying to, he did succeed in getting them to move one, I think. That might be something to ask for an update from him on, because I know there was some, like a flurry of upset residents. And then, also some of that like age-old stuff where if you don't put it in the sidewalk, then somebody else gets upset because it goes on their lawn. So there's that might be useful if maybe you, Linda, or somebody reached out to see if there's anything that the Pathways Committee could do to advocate or just raise awareness in that area. There is also going to be a road opening ordinance on the town meeting warrant, which is, I would see, as kind of connected to this as well. Basically giving the town a little bit more clearly stated power to prohibit certain things in the right of way and regulate. A lot of it is about just the standards that contractors have to use in the process they have to go through in order to dig up roads and put them back together in a way that doesn't cause sinkholes. But there's also stuff about the poles and right of way stuff. So it would be useful to review that and make sure that, if there's education needed for the public, that there might be a role for Pathways there. There was one time when a similar ordinance didn't pass in Camden. And a lot of it was related. It seems like a few people didn't like the idea that the town would be responsible for pruning their trees. I don't think it's totally relevant now, but so there's that, and then the Elm Street sidewalk stuff is figuring out. And it might just be a new, when the new select board, whoever that may be, comes on, you might want to raise that a lot, or also maybe asking people what they think about it for the, in the upcoming election. Basically, it's the political will to move forward on that Elm Street sidewalk, which I think the way you stated it, that it's been the Pathways Committee's highest priority in Camden for a long time, was, I actually hadn't heard it stated that way until the letter. And so just really sort of reiterating that would be good. But yeah, we're at a little bit of a standstill. There's the John Street project, which I do think will go through. I heard that there was a little bit of talk of possibly putting in, if there was federal money committed, maybe a sewer expansion to Mountainside. A lot of the people at the Mountainside mobile home are what's it? Mountainside
Park.
They understandably have expressed concerns about the speed of traffic there. And so there might be a sewer project that happens there, and whether or not there would be an opportunity that would maybe go on Mullino Road. So possibly, looking at at least a larger shoulder or something like that. And it would be good to get in early if you have opinions about that, even if I'm sure Mullino Road isn't like the Pathways Committee's highest priority, but kind of continuing that strategy of making sure that when they do these other projects, they take into consideration the bike improvements. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a good update. And that role, I'm not trying to divert from the plans, but it seems like we covered the plans pretty well in our next plan of action for the plans. I hope I didn't rush through that one. But I also wanted to touch base about the video, and Andrew and, I guess Will's not here.
Before we jump too deep into that, can I just make sure we have sort of what the plan of action is, who's going to do what? Because we have kind of the framework, but we don't necessarily have who's going to do what. So we have we're going to have sort of separate towns look at theirs in general. We won't necessarily between now and June work on any of the tone or language pieces. We'll have that kind of be a common piece that maybe somebody
No, I don't think so. I'm going to disagree. I would say, let's go, let's move forward with these plans. And I think Camden, you guys have, I mean, you communicate and we'll communicate. And I think I would like to just do a Zoom and say, okay, here's the plan. What are you, Kristen, what are you thinking about it? Margot, Amber, Heidi, you know, what's our latest, what happened in Rockport? Let's make sure we list it out. And hopefully the same thing's happening in Camden, so that when we come back in June, we've got something material in both of those plans that we can review and then do Jeff's process of prioritizing, which I do remember, Jeff. I remember well that we went through a great process of prioritizing. I don't think it has to be really long, because we sort of know at this point through the work plans what we prioritized. So it doesn't, I don't think we need to, you know, vote on the 10. I think we need to come to an agreement on what they are. Does that sound too vague as a framework?
So we're saying each town will meet together between
Yeah.
now and June to review the town plan with the update from the work plan, and then the June meeting will be to review what each group did.
To date, yeah. And we better have some progress. We better have some
And
progress.
I'm not 100% sure that the work plans reflect the results of that prioritization. I will make sure that the prioritization that we did, that you remember so well, Linda, is put into those master plan folders where the work is, where Margo, you've got to post it. I'll add that priority list from there. I don't think the work plan 100% reflects it. And then the other thing I'll add are the maps of both towns, so you can see them in the context of the master plan. But Margot, I agree. It feels a little fuzzy right now, what's happening. I will commit that I will work with Jane on getting something drafted up for Camden. I don't know whether the actual writing of the two plans and writing them as one would create challenges, or whether it's better to keep them separate. I understand the intent, and I fully support the idea of the intent, Allison, but I just don't know if it's easy to do or easier to keep them separate. I don't know.
Well, what I included in the minutes is that we'll have two additions to the master plan. One would be a map, and the second would be a section on projects that better connect the two towns, like highlighting those in some way. That, you know, and that also the tone would be similar for both plans, as well as the template. Like, so they'll read very similarly.
Yeah. I think that makes it easier in the future to work on them too. Updating them.
Okay, so we got the plan, right? We've got our action plan. Sounds like we got it. So then can we move on to the video, because that's another piece of unfinished business. And in my mind, I was
That was a
thinking,
question, Linda. You asked, can we move on? I just have one really quick little question for Allison. And then we can move on. You said it was
Okay.
a question.
okay,
Allison, Dave was working on this was related to your update. Dave was working on some language or verbiage to be added to town ordinances, I think, that would mandate utility companies working with us so that the poles are not placed poorly. Is that wording that's in the warrant article somewhere?
Yeah, yes, that would include, so placing poles in the town right of way would be considered in a road opening act, so to speak. So, yes.
So that'll give us leverage to push back on the utility companies. That's awesome. And I'm so excited about that, and I really think that Pathways should come out with a supportive statement about that and what the ramifications are to make sure that we gain more public support for it.
And
during the
yeah,
vote.
I think it's a little bit of a, there's a little nervousness about like the misinterpretation that could happen also. I know Nancy Cottle Johnson, in particular, was, she gave a presentation to the Conservation Commission about Tree City and the history of trees and the Conservation Commission. And she broadened that a bit to include sort of some of the other things that she's been concerned about over the years, and mentioned this specific ordinance, like the last time the town tried to pass a right-of-way ordinance. I think there were a lot of misinterpretation, but she talked about passing things out of the post office and feeling very proud of the fact that it had been voted down. And there are some changes to it now. But people get a little confused with I don't know. I don't know how it's the biggest part of this is just making sure that there are standards for when, when a water main breaks and they have to dig up the road. And then it's actually, I didn't ever realize what a big problem it is that a lot of the time they put things back together, and if they don't like adhere to certain standards, you end up with sinkholes in the road and the sidewalk and all these things. And it like really matters that when they pave a road, you're not supposed to be digging it back up again within a certain amount of time and all this stuff. And we don't really have anything that regulates all of that specifically. So anyway, we should talk more about look over the ordinance language and see if there are things that would make sense to highlight. I don't know exactly why Nancy found this to be such a threat last time, but it seems to be mostly related. I think it was probably mostly related. She seemed to think to the trees. But anyway, that's I'll say look over the ordinance language, and I wouldn't want to like awake a sleeping bear by digging up old memories. I don't know exactly why it didn't pass last time. There have been some changes made to it, but it is an important thing because it costs us a lot of money when the town's streets and sidewalks get dug up improperly and they fall apart. So, but it would be the CMP, the pole thing. It would be a good part of that to highlight. Although I do think that we already have some power. But it seems to be that it's like if somebody catches them in the act of putting the pole in, then somebody from the town is able to go over, and they seem to be willing to negotiate on that. But if they're there by themselves, they just put it wherever. It's a very confusing thing. It's a very confusing thing. My understanding was that if a town has an ordinance, that the utility company, prior to them going into the right of way, must check with the town on that placement. But if the ordinance doesn't exist, then they don't have to check. So recently, I know that CMP did reach out to the town and ask for the form that, because they believe that they did have to go through a process. So it's all just, and it's consolidated, I guess, that they have an agreement where Consolidated puts in the polls, but then Dave, it should really be Dave explaining this. But so somebody should reach out to him and get the basics before but there's, I do know that he had learned something about CMP and Consolidated puts the polls in and then turns them over to CMP.
Is the ordinance posted on the website already, the draft ordinance?
I know it's been on our select board packets, but I don't know if they have all of that. I'll find it and I'll send it to everybody. I'll do that right now.
That'd be really cool. Thank you. That was it, Linda. Go video.
Okay, thank you. And I also put in the chat, Margot, we can capture the chat, whatever's in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't disappear, right?
Well, we have to save it if we want it.
We save it before the meeting ends.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Holly has sent me a couple of links to Camden Parks and Rec. They've got some maps there and the Snowball Trail. So just some resources that we can use as when we're talking about, when we're concentrating on the maps, because I think that's a great idea, Allison, if we can do that. So the video. So I was hoping that we could get a couple more people in there before we edit, a couple more subjects, not a couple more of us, but a couple more, like the kids. I was hoping Will could just do a quick 10-second interview with the kids, and who was the other one to go along with Susan, right? Susan's her name, Allison and Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there was somebody else, and I don't know, was it can't remember who we wanted to capture, but
I thought Will was going to get some kids.
well, you said you were going to get on, you were going to ask Will, and I never followed up. Yeah, you did.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think I did, but I didn't hear back from him.
But we have student voices. We just don't have students on camera.
I think we need just a clip, just a real short clip. We just broaden it just a hair more. And then, and I do believe that we agreed on a 2 to 3 minute video to show to the select board. So can we get the 8th graders who ride their bikes every day? And, you know, maybe they're carefree and happy and they don't have any problems, but we'll find out. And then I don't know if who else was in our discussion, and none of you are remembering it either. There was just somebody else that we wanted to get on camera. And maybe it was somebody from Quarry
I thought
Hill.
it was the 8th graders and the students at Watershed were the two that.
Oh, that was it, Linda. It was it. It was Quarry Hill. Anita wrote a letter
Oh,
to the director or the whoever that person is at Quarry Hill, and they asked for a public notice be created. And so Anita created a public notice asking for people to step forward and volunteer and help. And we haven't gotten anything on that.
There's more of a posting for their bulletin board.
Posting for the
Okay.
bulletin board.
Okay, and
Yeah.
nobody
And so
responded.
Anita made a poster. But we didn't hear back from him.
Okay,
But I don't think Anita followed up with him either to find out what happened. Yeah, so
I still
Anita
have
will follow
connection
up.
there. I could possibly do that.
so if we got somebody at the other end of the age spectrum, that's great. If not, okay, fine. But if so, Jeff, you'll follow up with Will again and just see.
I'm going to follow up with Will again, and I'm going to follow up with the middle school, the 8th graders. The woman there, the nurse, I can't remember her name right now, but I do. Gretchen. Yeah, Gretchen would be the person. She'd be all over that.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Allison.
I'm also happy to just put out something to my kids' friend group and just ask, because if worst comes to worst, we can use, I'm looking at Colton here and his friends. I'm definitely well connected to the 7th graders that ride bikes.
That's fine.
That is great. But it's specifically Elm Street. That's what, and in the same vicinity where Susan was navigating. I mean, that is such compelling. Did you want to say something?
Oh
Andrew?
yeah, I mean, that's how he has to get to the Y.
Okay.
I was also gonna just suggest, maybe parents of those kids. I know my cousin lives in Rockport, her kid rides to Camden, and she's very concerned about some of the intersections.
On Route 1 on Elm Street and
Yeah, basically Union to, crossing Route 1 from Union Street, the intersection,
by Stop and Go.
stop and go, yeah, to get through there.
Yeah, I
Do
think
it. Just do it, Andrew. Just do it.
Can you just
Just
take
do it
your
and send
phone,
it.
Andrew, and just ask, just to get a clip?
Sure.
just hold the phone horizontally, okay, not vertically, just,
Okay.
okay, excellent. All right, and then we'll get that video.
And then the clips go to you, Linda?
Yeah, and we're gonna just pare it down to 2 or 3 minutes. I think we had a long discussion and we agreed to that.
Okay, so I'll just see what I could get and I'll send it to you and you can use it or not use it.
Okay, great. So the only other thought that I know you guys probably have plenty on your minds. The only other thought I had on my mind, Andrew, was the bond. Remember, I sent you the email, the update from I think it was from Natural Resources Council, because we signed on to that bond.
Probably BCM.
Huh? Oh, no, I don't know.
It was BCM. And,
Was it?
and you mentioned in that email, there's a rally in Augusta tomorrow. I can't go, but that's in support of that too.
Oh, that's in support of it? Okay.
So if
Main
anyone's
trails,
going to
invest-
Augusta tomorrow, it's a Jeff.
Okay.
I can't make it, but yeah.
So
they
what
go?
it is, did everybody take a look at it? It is the Natural Resources Council of Maine and Frenchman Bay Conservancy and the bike, Chris Riley, Maine Recreational Trail Program. Anyhow, they're talking about the bond and they have speakers and how the Maine Trails bond will benefit Maine. But I guess that it's got a whole host of discussion items, and it sounds like that is a really what is it, 30 million? 30 million?
30 million.
That if it passes, then we should stay right on top of it to see if we can get any of that money directed over here. So that was what was running through my mind. Do you guys have other stuff?
No, I will say, having been in Augusta on Thursday with kids, the word is out. There's still quite a bit of excess revenue that some things are getting funded. So maybe that would be one of them. And you're right. Then that's the time to stay on top of, making sure that we don't miss out.
Jane, you got something?
Yeah, I just wonder if we have any update on the paving of the Shirtail Point pathway. Do we have any timeline on that from anybody? Still not paved. And now it's washed out. So they're gonna have to start over with the gravel.
Yeah, it's too warm. It's still not, they haven't started paving yet because it's like there's a certain temperature that has to get hit, and they did just do the public landing, but it's all temperature related. But they actually, I think I had heard somebody was trying to do something that they needed to do fast before the paving. So it is supposed to be like really soon in the season.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific date. The other thing that I forgot to mention is that, has anybody heard anything more recently than I have about the Route 1 North? Because that got funded through Susan Collins' special request. And I think DOT had said they were just gonna go for it and put it out to bid. But we should be kind of watching for that and maybe at some point reviewing what the pathways, hopes and dreams had been there. Most of it was related to compromised painting on in the shoulder, I
Mhm.
think. And Dave, I think, had said he was going to look into what you guys had requested, but that we had been maybe told no to or something.
Oh, really? The town was told no to some things?
No, remember there were some rules about where the bike markings could go. And if there's enough room
Yeah,
for pedestrians and bikes and some nuance there. And he was going to see if he was going to look into it. It would be good to review what the request had been and to sort of maybe send Dave like a reminder, just so that if it comes up, he's kind of ready for that.
So it sounds like I should get in touch with Dave on a couple of different things and just touch base on behalf of the committee. And one is the Route 1 North and one is Shirt Tail paving. And what was the other one we talked about at the beginning of the meeting?
The road opening ordinance.
Mm,
Oh, CMP poles.
MP polls.
I thought
I don't
that there was a bill over before the legislature about that. I thought that was resolved. Apparently not.
The thing is, though, the other problem is that when CMP when they come to do it with the poles, they're angry homeowners also. And business owners sometimes too, that are concerned about things like signs being blocked, or some people don't want the pole in their yard even more than they, don't want it in the sidewalk. So I think that it's not always a case of, I think they come in, they put the pole sometimes in the place where they're going to have to deal with the least resistance.
Yeah.
And that's why when somebody from the town comes out screaming, that can sometimes push it one way or the other. They have the right to put it in the people's yard, but there's a lot of resistance on Elm Street to change, I think, in some places. Anyway, Dave has more information about exactly what might be useful, because I know he's had some, I know I've directed a few people to him who were upset about this, and I think he learned more through that.
Andrew?
Is there any possibility of burying those lines? I know it's not talked about much in this country, but in Europe, they do it everywhere. We did try to do it on Route 1 North up High Street. Let's talk about burying the power lines. That never happened, but this might be an ideal spot to put the conduits in and bury those lines on the Elm Street side.
That would have to be part of like a major reconstruction.
Well, that whole sidewalk needs a major reconstruction. So dig a trench, put the lines under the sidewalk and be done with it.
They're going to say, I mean, every time that gets brought up, it's just, I've always been told it's just completely insurmountable from a cost perspective. I agree with you. It makes no sense to me. The only way they were able to get them like on Main Street, I always thought that they had buried the power lines on Main Street. But that's not what happened. It's all connected to the backs of the building. So there's this tangled web of stuff.
That's horrible.
And I never realized it, but if you look at like the Smiling Cow and Mariners and all those, it's all like coming from the public landing there. So for some reason, it's just incredibly expensive. But I don't know. I think we need a consumer-owned utility probably.
Yeah, I think that technology's gotten, I think it's worth asking, Andrew. I
It's
think it
cheaper.
is.
It's
Yeah.
a lot cheaper in the long run because you don't have trees falling on them every big storm.
But Elm Street is a straight shot, it doesn't have to be dug real deep. You don't have granite you probably have to, blast out of. So when we when we make progress on Elm Street, right, can't we just say, hey, can we bury?
They
Bury
do
the,
it in every new subdivision, a lot of the new subdivisions that they do it. So I don't understand why it's so, I guess that's because it's new and they don't have to deal, they can plan it out from the beginning, maybe.
but if you're gonna dig up Elm Street anyhow, I mean, it makes total sense to bury. In a,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
the thing, though. We're not at the point where there's the political will to even like change a stop sign. So, um,
okay,
but it would be good if in the meantime, they didn't add additional poles to the sidewalk. Where,
Yeah.
or where we want to put that's the thing, is where we want to put the sidewalk, or where we are going to improve the sidewalk. The pole's going to be a problem for that too.
Hey, Linda, sharpening your question with Dave regarding Route 1 North.
yeah,
What we were advocating for was the painting in the lane of the bike.
yeah,
And the issue was that DOT said if you paint a bike in there, it means that pedestrians aren't allowed, and they don't want that.
yeah, well,
Um,
that Route 1 North is where that woman was hit on a bike. She was hit by a car too, so.
Yeah.
I think
So that's what we want to do. And the other, we were trying to look at whether there was such a thing as a symbol that was all inclusive.
Yep.
I had written to BCM about that. And they said that would be something that they would have to prioritize with all the other things they work with on MDOT.
Well, they're no slackers these days. Every time there's a crash, every time somebody's killed by a car, they're issuing a press release, which I really appreciate that they're doing. Because they're keeping track of
Yeah.
just unnecessary deaths from vehicles.
Yeah.
Linda, just to capture it in the minutes, the three things you're going to talk to Dave Laurent about are Route 1 North,
CMP poles and shirt tail point paving. Everybody talked out? Anita and Jeff, you need your coffee.
Jeff, wake up.
Yeah, no, I'm really worried a little bit about the CMP poles. Not CMP. I want to say first, it's utility poles. It's not just CMP. It's all utility poles. If Nancy Cottle Johnson is out there campaigning negatively in support of a negative voice about this ordinance, and we look at this ordinance and it does speak to the issue of the town getting more control for utility placement in the right of way. I think that Pathway should say something.
So
On the good side.
she's not out there doing that right now. But she did tell us about how in 2007, she successfully, it was called a right-of-way ordinance then. And maybe that's not something that is relevant anymore, or maybe it's not. It was just you could watch the Conservation Commission meeting if you want. It was a little bit painful because it was way off topic from what the idea was that she was sharing the history of things the Conservation Commission should look out for with the handing over the responsibility of doing the Tree City report every year and the Arbor Day celebration. And then she just she connected it to the trees a little bit because of the trees that we're planting now are, so if the town comes and plants a tree in the town right of way, it's through the town program, it's free to the resident. We're only doing it in places where people want a tree. But then the other thing is that some people have been concerned about oh, well, what about the cost of pruning the tree over the years? And because it's considered as part of the shade tree ordinance, it's considered a town asset, the shade trees. And so the town will go and and prune them. That's like considered the responsibility of the town. Nancy was concerned with the passage of the right-of-way ordinance, that it was giving the town too much power to prune trees. And as you know, she's having the arborist business. They have a way to prune trees that they, wouldn't want the town to do it. But most people are happy to have that be the town's responsibility and not have to pay to do the pruning themselves. The town would never, there's no incentive for the town to prune people's trees that when they want to prune them themselves. But Nancy also does have some some of the issue has been bushes that grow into the sidewalk too much. And so we already have the authority through with us to remove those. It's, but I think she didn't want it stated in a different way. It was kind of convoluted, and it may not be smart to say, hey, Nancy, just so you know, this is similar to what didn't pass before. And I don't know, but it was just obvious to me, like how it was turned into this idea that the town would be having like so much power, just be blasting through people's front yards. And it's not aimed at trying to take over what residents are doing. It's aimed at like big companies, like contractors and CMP. And but if somebody were to get it in their head that the town was going to use this as a way to uproot everybody's front yards, I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much, but we could chat.
Unmute.
Okay,
Just read it, and see if, just so that you're prepared to.
Hey, Jason, if you want to go ahead and start it, this is about over. I can run to the store and get beans and saltines in a minute.
what are we
I don't
having?
know. It's up to you.
Don't forget the milk.
Okay, I think, anybody want to make a
Does the-
motion to adjourn?
The road, can I say something?
Yes, Anita.
Does the present phraseology of the proposed ordinance talk about trees that people plant in the right of way? What I remember from the ordinance that did not pass last time, that Nancy lobbied very hard for it not to pass, it it did more directly address trees that people plant in the right of way. And any familiarization that you have with their property, you can see why she would have been so up in arms about it.
Yeah, I think this is
So,
one of those that we could probably
I
talk
think
about.
if you point out that it's, I haven't read the ordinance yet, but that it's not addressing the
You wanna just
issue
start
that
the top
failed
of me,
last
we can
time
do that.
because of her advocacy. That
Yeah, I
might
mean,
disarm it a
it's-
little bit.
The thing is, we already have that power. So some of it's a little bit, they already trimmed their bushes. Why don't we just read it, and then it's probably one of those things that we could speculate about all day on here and spend too much time of everybody else's. But I'll send you the language, and then we can discuss if any action is needed. It sounds like you remember a little bit more than I do about the reasons for it not passing last time. And I think there are some significant differences, but I can't tell you exactly what those are.
Okay, I'm checking out.
I'm checking out too.
Okay, motion to
Thank you.
adjourn.
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison.